Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 316 of a year of change. Today, we're starting things off a little bit differently. Well, not really a little bit differently. We're going to do some of the old familiar stuff. Number one, do our weigh-in. So, weigh ourselves 3 times, take the highest number, and hopefully we've made a little bit of progress. I was able to make a little bit of progress this week, which is nice. I didn't hit like a milestone, like a 5-pound mark, which kind of bugged me, but the past couple of weeks, I haven't really lost a whole lot. I've lost like 0.6 and then 0.4. And part of that is not doing my exercise, which is what we're going to talk about today. Well, sort of doing it, but half-assed doing it and, not doing it 1 day or 2 days. Anyway, it's been a slow couple of weeks, but, made a little bit of progress this week, which is very, very nice. So, and to a point where I'm a little over 15 pounds before I hit my 100-pound mark, which is nice. And hopefully we'll still hit that at the end of the series. I don't know if I am. But that's our first thing that we need to do. But the main thing, the reason why I say that I want to do something a little bit different is because over the past few weeks, we've been sort of making little tweaks and changes here and there. And part of me wants to keep going with that. Obviously, we need to keep improving and keep making changes and stuff like that. But there's another part of me that is still trying to hold back because I don't want to lose perspective. And to give you an idea, when I first started doing exercise and started talking about this to other people, if you remember a long, long time ago, there was one person that stands out in my head that had said, well, start off easy. Start with a 5K. That is someone with no comprehension as to how bad things are for us. That just assumes that you just start by jogging a 5K. And you simply can't. And I don't want to get to that point where, the spot that I'm in now, I can say, okay, well, if I dial it back a little bit, that's where we're going to start. So I decided to take a look at my exercise history, what I started doing when we just started this series. And although we have been improving sort of week to week to week, I know it's been accelerated a little bit because we're trying to catch up, and it's sort of understood that a lot of us are still doing the exercise that we started way, way back at the beginning. But I also wanted to have something in there that if you're just starting out, then it's going to be good enough that you should be able to continue on. And that's why I thought this was going to be important, because I don't want to get to a point where it's all right, now this week you improve this and this and this and this, and then now everyone's caught up in a matter of 6 or 7 weeks. Now, I know I had said a couple of weeks ago that we aren't going to be jumping all the way into vigorous exercise. We will eventually. After going through all this stuff, I think it's something that's doable. It's not going to be this week, so don't worry. But maybe next week, maybe the week after. Before the end, we'll be doing it. So but you'll be okay. Don't worry. So I decided to go back and take a look at when I first started doing exercise. Now, when I started the series, the main focus was going to be on food and changing our eating habits and getting away from junk food and overeating, especially for me. And a lot of those things. So the exercise was sort of secondary, but I knew it had to be something that we could start out really, really slowly and just sort of go in tandem with what we're trying to do. So that as we progress, then once we start exercising, we aren't starting from ground zero. Square one. Ground one, square zero, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. Square 1E, 0E, area. It was a place where we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So I decided that, early on, I wanted us to sort of start with something very, very simple, something that we could all do, and go from there. So my first tracking that I could find on MyFitnessPal was on day 45. Now, usually I was going about a week beforehand, but I thought, I'm going to start on day 45. That's where my history is. That's what I can see. That's where we can go from there. Now, I don't often track it anymore. I used to put a little note in MyFitnessPal saying burned X calories because it's important that we do keep track that we are exercising. I haven't been doing that. I haven't been following my own advice, which is very, very bad. I really need to start doing that again. So every day I should be putting something in, burned X calories, just so that I can go back because right now it looks like for the past 2 months, I haven't done anything. And I have. I'm on it every day. Except for one day a couple of weeks ago. Or last week. One of the two. Anyway, whenever I hurt myself. So, day 45 was the first time that I saw any notation in MyFitnessPal to exercise. And it's strange because I'm looking at it now and I think, okay, well, it's not really far off from what I was doing before, but I understand what it was like back then. And what had happened on day 45, I started doing exercise. I started doing just 5 kilometers, 3 times a week at 4 kilometers an hour. Now, this, just to put this into perspective, Okay, this is 4 kilometers an hour is not a fast pace. It's around 2.5 kilometers, or just under 2.5 miles per hour. Sorry, not kilometers. So to give you an idea, that's roughly the same speed that you would go if you were, when you first wake up in the morning and you stagger your way to the bathroom. Or if you're, let's put a real world perspective here. If you're just taking like a leisurely walk along the beach with a loved one, there you go. And there's less urine imagery in there. And if there is, if you're into that, ew, deviance. Anyway, so 2.5 miles an hour, 4 kilometers an hour is roughly the same speed that you would take a nice leisurely stroll. That's Moseian speed. That's what that is. So that's what I did for my exercise. Started out that way, and I walked until it hit the 5 kilometer mark. And I remember when I first started out, by the end of it, you're just like panting and puffing, and you can't breathe, you can't move, you can't do anything. I remember that it was so difficult first starting out. And part of the reason why I wanted to start out so slowly is because I wanted it to be effective, but not anything that I'm just going to say, I'm never going to do this again. So chances are it wasn't anything. I certainly wasn't sweating the way that I do now when I'm on it. Yuck. But it was, it was a good enough pace for me to start out with. And I started with 3 days a week that I can accurately and actually see. I know that when we first started doing exercise, it was a matter of, okay, we're just during the video, you just don't stay stagnant. And then that bumped up to half an hour. And then it bumped up to, 2 days a week and then 3 days a week. But I'm just going by my history. So I was able to see that 3 times a week I was doing 4 kilometers an hour for 5 kilometers. So roughly an hour and 15 minutes, somewhere around there. Which is nothing. But to someone who's 325 pounds, it's a lot. At that stage, I was probably like 315, 310. Still, over 300 pounds, it's a lot of energy. And it's hard. It is really, really hard to start out that way. So as I progressed, I did that for a full month with no changes whatsoever. It was the exact same thing every day, or 3 times a week anyway, for 4 weeks. There was no change in it. I didn't up, the speed or the distance or the incline or anything. The first change I noticed was about a month afterwards, and there was a 1% grade increase. So that's when I thought, okay, so it took me a month to get used to it, to get to a point where I thought, all right, I can do this. I'm ready to do a small improvement. So around day 75-ish, I upped it. So it was at a 1% grade, which is not a lot. It just means that for every 100 feet, then you're going up by 1 foot. So that's all it is. So, and then as things progressed, every couple of weeks or every week, I would see another 0.5% grade increase. And then I started seeing the speed increase to 4.5 and 4.6 until finally, it sort of got reset. Now, when I reset it, if I remember, it's because I was having, I was going to say back issues, but I had posture issues is what it was. Because by the time I was at a 5% grade, then you're really leaning forward, you're hunching over, and you're not really doing yourself any good. So at the first point that I decided, all right, I'm going to reset everything, start at a 0% grade. I was at 5 kilometers an hour, and that's when I started doing the jogging thing. So day 45 is when I started. To get to a point when I could finally jog, and I was only jogging for 1 minute out of every 20 when I first started. So I would walk for 19, and that last 1 minute I would jog. And then walk for 19, jog, walk for 19, jog. And so the first day that I did that was day 156. So 111 days of doing just walking before I was ever ready to run. And I think that gives us a very good idea as to how long it may take us to get to a point where we can start improving, in big leaps. Now, it's since day 111, here it is 200 days later, and I'm still doing the same thing. Except instead of me jogging once out of every 20 minutes, I'm jogging like 6 or 7 out of every, and then resting for 5. So out of every 15, we'll say for every 20 minutes, because I would go, I've been going, because I've sort of readjusted again. So for every 20 minutes, I'm jogging for 7. Does that sound right? No, because I'm going for 10, jogging for 7, going for 10, jogging for 7. So 7 minutes out of every 20, roughly. And then, 7, anyway. The math is a little bit different, but in general, I'm doing pretty much the same thing. And I've had to adjust a few times because I got to a point where I was jogging for 3 and then resting for 2 and then jogging for 4 and resting for 1, and then I expanded out the rest period. So I'm jogging for 7 and then resting for 5 and resting for 10 and all that. So it does change as we go. But getting to a point where I could jog just for 1 minute and it would knock the hell out of me, just that 1 minute, to being able to jog for 7 minutes straight, and it's the same speed, roughly. It's actually higher because I remember when I started jogging, it was around 8.5 kilometers an hour, and I'm up to 9 at this point. So it's taken 200 more days on top of all the other stuff that we've done to get to that point. So when we're looking at, from starting at 0, and I mean, I dove right in. I didn't start out by going, okay, well, I'm going to walk for 15 minutes. I started by 3 days a week for an hour at least. And although it's a very slow walk, that was my starting point, which I don't think is really bad. I think, obviously, if I can do it at 300 some pounds, then, we should be able, the majority of us should be able to do something similar to that. So as I progress that way, it's been 250 days, roughly, in total, that I've been exercising. And I'm still not to where I want to be. But it's okay. Because when I look back now and say, when I'm starting out, if I was to just say, okay, I'm just going to walk for 4 kilometers or 4 kilometers an hour, it would drive me buggy. I think it's a little too slow. I would just be moseying. I would know that there isn't anything that's actually happening, that it's not doing any good. And although this week I have had a couple of days where I've had to stop and actually, just walk for the entire 5 kilometers, that's mainly, it's weird. I've been able to do that. I'm actually able to walk farther and faster. Well, not faster, not farther, but faster. Walk at a regular pace and still do more now when I'm, for lack of a better term, injured. I'm going to say that because I don't know what it was. It's hurty bits somewhere. When I'm sick, I'm able to still do it. When I, just don't feel like doing it at all. That is my I'm going to be lazy exercise is still more than I was doing when I first started out. Not a lot, mind you, but it's still more than what I was doing. And the reason why I sort of wanted to go back and look through all this stuff is because as we've been progressing week by week, and we did an improvement last week, and we did an improvement the week before, and then we had upped it from regular just sort of looking for parking spots and elevators and stuff like that to actual moderate exercise, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I thought, well, it's probably time to bump it up again. And keep improving that way. But I didn't want to lose that perspective. Looking back and saying, well, no, obviously you should be able to do this. No, it's taken you 250 days to do this. Why should everybody else have to end up getting there in a month? It isn't feasible. It isn't reasonable, and it's stupid. And just like that asshole, it's like me saying start easy with a 5K. Now, eventually, at some point, we will be able to do a 5K. We may not be able to run it the entire way, but we'll be able to walk it the entire way, or wheel it, or bike it, or whatever it is that you decide to do, whatever your exercise is. And I know I sort of focus a lot on the walking portion of it, but for me, it's that cardiovascular aspect of it. That's what I'm looking for, because it's that being out of breath all the time. It's one of those things that always bothered me. That even though if I was walking with friends, if we had to go up a hill or something, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's done this, I try, okay, this is where the conversation is going to lull. I'm going to let them talk. I'm going to really focus on controlling my breathing, because I didn't want to get to the top of the hill and just going and panting and puffing and everything else to a point where I would actually hold my breath, which I thought for some reason is going to help, so that I would take a big deep breath, hold it in, slowly let it out, and try not to get them to see that I was out of breath. Meanwhile, my entire head was probably bright red. I was probably sweating all over the place, and they probably knew and just went, I don't want to say anything in case he has a heart attack. But it's always been something that bothered me, the fact that I was just always out of breath for every little tiny thing. Walking up a small hill, and I do mean a small hill, not like the great big one at work. I'm talking about one that's 10 steps, and I'm at the top. Going up a single flight of stairs. Brushing my teeth. Sitting up in bed. Sleeping. Stuff that just I was always out of breath. And now, even after I'm done my treadmill, after 7 minutes of jogging, yes, I'm out of breath, but by the time I start up that next interval, I'm back to regular breathing again. And that to me is a huge thing. And it's nice to be able to walk up a hill that I knew would have killed me before and not be dying and not be huffing and puffing and out of breath throughout the entire thing. It was a big, big thing for me. The overeating was sort of the food aspect of it. Being out of breath, I suppose, is the number one thing I wanted to get rid of with the exercise. So that's why I focus more on the treadmill and walking and jogging and stuff like that, more than the weights and stuff like that. I suspect that at some point I'm going to need to do that because I have no idea what my body looks like underneath all this fat, and I want it to at least be presentable. So I don't want to lose everything and go, okay, well, you know what? Your legs are fine because you've been carrying around 300 pounds with you for your entire life. But you just kind of, you go, and now you just look like a weird pear. What it looked like anyway. But I want to be able to at least look at it and say, okay, I know I can see stuff now. All the fat is gone. I need to see what I can work with and just sort of go from there so that I look presentable and keep a human form. That's the main thing. But for right now, that's what I'm focusing on is the treadmill and the cardiovascular part of it because it was a big thing for me and it still is. Less now because I'm not out of breath all the time. I do a lot of walking during the day, which is really nice. My job allows me to get up and move around quite a bit. So there is that as well. But the main reason why I sort of wanted to visit my history is I didn't want to get to a point where I was saying, all right, now we're going to improve this and now we're going to improve that and get so far ahead that those of us that are still behind that didn't start on day 45 with the exercise, that maybe you came in halfway through the series. Maybe you came in at the exercise portion. Maybe that's what you're looking for. Something like that. I don't want to get to a point where it's like, this is going too fast. It's too much too soon. And then just sort of stopping. Because we know what that's like. When things get ahead of you and you're like, you know what? Screw it. This is too much. I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. And then in which case you sort of fall by the wayside again. And then that suffers and you bother not doing anything. So I don't want to get us too far ahead. We will be getting to a point where we'll be able to do regular, vigorous exercise. And it's not going to be horrible for us. We aren't going to be hurting all the time. We aren't going to be, just killing ourselves at the gym or anything like that. It's going to be different for everybody. We talked about that before when we first started doing this. The moderate exercise versus vigorous exercise. There's stuff that I do now that people would say, no, this is easy. This is moderate exercise. For me, it's vigorous. And then there's other stuff that I do that for other people, it's going to be vigorous. So where we're all at different stages, I want to sort of keep everybody at a point where, it's still doable. And not so much that it's too much too soon, because just like the eating, if we were to say, okay, starting on week 1, no more sugar, no more salt, we're going to start eating fiber and no more processed foods. No, you're simply not going to do it. And the same thing goes for exercise. We need to make changes. Yes, we need to start improving, but we can't do it all in one go because we know it simply is not going to work. So we aren't going to go backwards this week. I'm not going to say, okay, well then we're going to, forget the moderate exercise and keep going that way. We're going to stay with the moderate exercise this week. We are still going to do an improvement, but just like last week, when we do an improvement, make sure it's something incremental. Something that you can look back and say 250 days from now, I did this change, 50 times. Now I can see that there's a change there. And just to sort of look back and say, I'm doing the same thing I was doing before, but I'm much better at it. Or it doesn't make me as sweaty, or it doesn't put me out of breath as much. So whatever your improvement is, if you're doing this, 1 day a week, bump it up to 2 days a week. Whatever your exercise is. If you're doing this 2 days a week, bump it up to 3 days a week. If you're already at 3 days a week and you say, okay, well, I've been walking for 20 minutes or half an hour, then add another 5 minutes or add another 10 minutes if you think you can do it. Whatever it is that you feel that you can, safely do, obviously, because you don't want to do what I did and hurt yourself. Whatever you can do safely and something that you're going to feel that there's a change there, but it's not so much that you're going to knock yourself out the first time and have to go back and say, oh, I'm going to just stay with what I'm doing. If it is too much the first time around, stop. Don't hurt yourself. Don't get to a point where you want to quit. If it's way too much, then just dial it back a bit. And if you say, well, I've been doing half an hour, I want to do 45 minutes now. If you get to 40 minutes, or if you get to 35 minutes, and you find, God, this is really, really bad, then say, okay, well, 45 might be a little ambitious. I'll go to 35 minutes, or I'll go to 40 minutes, or whatever it is that you decide to do. If you're weightlifting, and you think, if you think you're going to be adding on another 10 or 15 pounds, if it's too much, add 5. Little tiny changes. And if it takes us 250 more days to get to where you want to be, then it's going to take us 250 more days. Because this entire process, although we're sort of looking at 1 year, it's mainly to get us to a point where at the end of the year, we know what we need to do. We know what changes we need to make with our food, with our eating habits, with our exercise, and, safely, obviously, as well. So if you get to the end of the year and you think, you know what, I got halfway to my weight goal, which is roughly where I am. I got halfway where I wanted to be with my weight. I'm about halfway through what I thought I was going to be doing for my exercise. It doesn't matter. You know that you can keep going. You know what changes need to be made. You know what progress you can do. You know what increments you can go in. If you can do 5 pounds a week, then you can do 5 pounds a week. If you can add 5 minutes a week, if you can add 0.1 miles per hour to your, or 0.1 mile, 0.1 mile per hour. Anyway, if you can increase your speed by 0.1 of whatever increment that you are on per week, then at least you know, okay, that's my improvement level. That's the increment that I need to go up every week so that it's enough that I can feel it. And by the end of the week, it's not nothing for me again, and I'll be able to go on to the next one. And it doesn't matter how small it is, because, in another year from now, then you'll be at where you want to be. And I mean, I know that I still have a long way to go. I'm still going to keep improving with food and exercise and everything else. But I'm okay because I understand, because of this year, I know what I need to do now. So, I mean, obviously, still have a lot to learn. There's still a tremendous amount of information, even information that we've done, way at the beginning. Even not even at the beginning, like halfway point. There have been changes since then that I'm sure if we go back, we can go, that's not correct anymore. Because there's knowledge is always evolving. People are coming out with, new studies, and anyway, I was just going to keep going on. But my main point is that, number one, don't lose perspective. Take a look back at where you started, on day one or whatever day that you jumped in with us. You will see, however small it is, that there is a bit of a change there. And just sort of project that forward and think, you know what, a year from now, this is where I want to be. And if you're like the majority of us, you're not going to hit that. I didn't hit my goal for this year. I know I'm not. There's no way in hell I'm going to be losing another 65 or 75 pounds in the next month. Simply not going to happen. I wanted to lose 150 pounds. I wanted, to be able to run a 5K. I wanted to be able to, just be in shape in general. It's not going to happen. But I do know that eventually it will, because I know what changes I need to make. Week by week, I know how to improve it so it's small enough that it's not going to hurt me. And I think that's sort of part of the problem with us trying to accelerate this last little bitch. All right, this last exercise bitch. There we go. That's what we're going to call it. This last little bit of exercise, because we've been accelerating it a little too much, and I think that I've sort of lost perspective that way. And then I'm trying to get, caught up to where I am, but I'm also trying to improve. So I'm trying to, do all this other stuff, and we don't really need to. We will get to that vigorous exercise before the end of the year. We'll be able to add that in there. It's not going to be something that you think, oh God, I'm not ready for it yet. We will be ready. It's going to take us a long time to get there, but we will be ready. But anyway, that's all I want to talk about today. So no improvements this week. Well, no additions, no extra weird things like, new exercises and vigorous exercise and all the other stuff. Right now, do another improvement. The same way that you did last week, whatever it is. One other increment. And maybe next week, it'll be a month since we started doing moderate exercise. So if you feel that you're ready, then we can start talking about the vigorous exercise and what that takes into account. And it's not going to be anything that, this is what you have to do 500 push-ups. Otherwise, it's not vigorous. Different for everybody. The same way that we did moderate exercise can be the same way for the vigorous stuff. Next week might be a little bit too early, especially where I just said, we don't know when we're going to do it. Surprise, motherfuckers, we're doing it next week. I don't know yet, but that's something that we need to take a look at. But for right now, I'm going to leave this video here. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.